Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hey, this is your girl Natalie, coming lazily straight onto her iPhone voice notes to let you know that I am currently on maternity leave in terms of podcasting, and that the episode that you're about to listen to is a replay based on some of my most popular episodes. I will probably not record any new podcasting content until May or June, so in the meantime, please enjoy some of these old episodes. Maybe you've never heard them before, or you've heard them, but you'll get something new out of it this time around. Please give me some grace in case there are some outdated offers or outdated stories, but I will also include some information at the very end of the episode for ways that you can still get support from me beyond this episode. I'm not going completely off the grid. I still plan to have smaller spaces where I share some things, so I'll share that with you at the very end of the episode. Thanks so much for understanding, and I hope you enjoy this recording. Sex anxiety. Hello, everybody. Sex anxiety, the fear and worry that tend to manifest around having sex with your partner. If you struggle with relationship OCD or relationship anxiety or just generalized intrusive thoughts related to your relationship or to your partner, it is very likely that you will have sex anxiety. I used to always get sex anxiety on Tuesdays. I'll let you know why in a little bit. For now, I'm going to just come up with 10 thoughts that might manifest around sex. These types of thinking result in an emotional experience of anxiety that we can classify as sex anxiety. So here's 10. I'm not feeling attracted to him today or at all. Sex sounds disgusting right now. What if I perform terribly in bed? What if he thinks I'm not attractive? What if he performs terribly in bed and I hurt his feelings, or I have to pretend to enjoy it? What if he performs great but I'm too anxious and in my head to be able to enjoy it? What if we're just not sexually compatible? I'm so bloated today, there is no way he could find me attractive right now. And if he says I'm hot or sexy, he's lying to me. If he were the right partner, this wouldn't be so complicated. If I don't have sex with him right now, he's going to be angry with me. I don't want to feel pressured to have sex. I came up with 11. So there are many more of these, obviously. These are just the ones I came up with off the top of my head. Having these types of thoughts sucks because I think some part of us understands that sex can be deeply enjoyable or hey, orgasmic, and it just feels so, so far away to us because we keep having these thoughts. And we feel envious of people who supposedly don't have these thoughts. We look at other couples that we assume have steamy sex and we think, hey, they look sexually compatible. Why is our sex so clunky and awkward? I want a new boyfriend. So there's the envy, but we can't forget the nice dash of guilt thrown into the mix. After all, maybe your partner's obsessed with you and thinks you look great, hot, sexy, and that you're awesome. Or maybe, according to your ROCD, relationship OCD, he's just horny and is using you for his personal pleasure. And that if he doesn't get it from you, he's going to be dissatisfied in the relationship and he'll feel resentful. At least I know my anxious mind used to tell me that. And so what happens when we feel like or we perceive that we're being manipulated or used, or assume that someone wants something from us for their own selfish gain? You can't fight your psychology. You automatically reject or resist it, even if that's not actually what they want from you. Now, are there people that want something for you for their selfish gain? Absolutely. Is your partner one of those people? Maybe not. If you've got a secure, loving partner, chances are it's a lot more complicated than that. Like, no, they aren't using you for their selfish gain. In a relationship, you take the other person's well-being as importantly as you take your own well-being. However, if you don't take sexual responsibility within the partnership, there will eventually be resentment around it. Now, what do I mean by taking sexual responsibility? I mean keeping yourself turned on and contributing actively to the sexual well-being of the partnership. That means doing the internal work around resistance, around receiving sexual gestures, working with any sexual trauma and blocks, actively initiating sexual gestures, and having sexual conversations. Now, I'm not necessarily a trauma therapist, and of course it's a lot more complicated than that. If you've got severe sexual trauma, this might not be the episode for you. But if you're dealing with generalized sexual anxiety, this is the episode for you. It seems like a lot of work, right? Doing all this inner work. It is. I heard this quote once that when the sex life in a relationship is satisfying, the importance of sex takes about 10% of the relationship. But when the sex life is bad, it takes up 90%. Right? It's kind of like your health. If you're healthy, you're all about maintaining that health, but you're not thinking about your health all the time. But if you're sick, health is something that takes over your life. If you're sick, it's all you think about. So about 5 years back, I was in the beginning of building my yoga business, which I'm not really doing anymore. I just left my corporate job. It was summer, and I took on 4 jobs. One of which was working for my home yoga studio, and another one of which was my own personal yoga business that I was working on. But the other 2 were just part-time jobs. I was helping Preston at his family business, and I was making ends meet pretty comfortably, but I was miserably exhausted. When I was working 4 jobs, I noticed that Preston and I were spending very little time together due to our crazy work schedules. So one day we got strict and scheduled our days off together, Tuesdays. These were intended to be our days to connect and sort of catch up. Our sex life had been dwindling ever since I started that corporate job 3 years before, but now it was even worse. I was stressed out, exhausted, a little overweight, feeling inflamed overall. Suddenly we had Tuesdays together, and I thought it would be a relief, a chance to rekindle our flame and work on our relationship. Except the opposite happened. On Tuesday morning, I would wake up, look at Preston, and my first thought would be, shit, it's sex day. I am so tired. We are both so gross. I feel disgusted just looking at him. I could pinpoint 24.78 things that disgusted me about Preston at any given moment and his mannerisms. The idea of having sex with him, or even just being intimate, repulsed me. And I felt guilty that that was my reality, but I never admitted to the guilt. So I kept telling myself that I wanted a more present, spiritual partner. Someone that could just look at me with steamy eyes and fuck me passionately in my soul. I wanted deep, slow, eye-gazing, whatever I assume tantric sex is, I want that. So I looked into a bunch of stuff. I looked at a bunch of different coaches. I worked with my own personal coach. Her name is Shayna Hiller. She's awesome. I subscribed to Layla Martin's YouTube channel, which is incredible, by the way, and tried to implement the techniques and strategies that I learned there. They were incredible, but I never stuck to them. So they would act as a little band-aid. There was nothing wrong with the approaches. I just didn't stick to them and then told myself that they didn't work, when really I just wasn't committed. So I would tell Preston to do these deep breathing and tantric exercises with me, which he would always do, open-mindedly. Although sometimes with an anxiety of his own that I completely get now. I was putting pressure on him to live up to this spiritually evolved tantric sex master yogi fantasy that I had in my head. Of course, the fantasy doesn't exist. So he never measured up. I would always interject how he was doing it wrong or not syncing his breath with mine perfectly enough. And then, of course, guess what? He would get all insecure and shut down. And then I would use it as a confirmation that he didn't get me enough. Have you done this before? I have an incredible aunt that first planted the seed that women are responsible for their own turn-on. And that you can get turned on by life, not just by sex. And that as long as you've got an open-minded partner, you can take the lead for what you want in sex. And your partner will be thrilled to do whatever it is that will make you excited. So I tried to take her advice. On Tuesday mornings, I started telling Preston I need some time to myself and leave the house, come back at 1 p.m. and we'll have sex. And he would go off and do his own thing. And so then from like 9 or 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., I would try to turn myself on. I would do the self-care. I would work out or take a walk or try to read erotica or whatever. A lot of the times it worked. But also, a lot of the times it was really hard because during the self-care, I would get these intrusive thoughts. Well, what if I do all this self-care in 3 hours and I'm still not turned on? Then I will have sex when I don't want to, and that's bad. So I didn't even allow myself to enjoy those 3 hours because I was doing it with an end goal in mind that I need to be turned on in 3 hours so that when Preston comes back, we have great sex. That's not even self-care. That's self-care with condition. So Preston would, of course, come back at 1 p.m. And because of our history at this point, he'd be too scared to initiate because he didn't want me to feel pressured. But we both knew that because of that, it was kind of on me to initiate. And I wouldn't want to initiate because, Guess what? 3 hours of pressuring myself to feel sexually turned on under the guise of self-care isn't enough to unpack 6 straight days of nonstop work and pressure and exhaustion. Which brings me to my first point about why you might not be in the mood on your 1 or 2 days off in your week. A few hours of self-care in your entire week is not enough to feel physiologically safe and at ease. If you want to feel turned on sexually and have the capacity to be turned on by your partner, it is absolutely essential to be feeling connected and turned on to life every day. To be regularly inspired, grounded, feeling safe, right? I want to reference both Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the Eastern chakra system for a moment. Because in both of these, doesn't matter whether you're Eastern or Western medicine, the fundamentals of our well-being begin with our sense of safety. Food, shelter, financial well-being, etc. So sometimes Preston and I would sit in bed for hours after he comes home at 1 o'clock, and we'd kind of cuddle awkwardly until I pathetically initiated, and then it would be okay. But many times I'd be in my head the whole time thinking, man, if I were with the right partner, the more spiritual partner, this would be easier. Ugh. And I would try to make Preston feel better for my lack of turn on by rationalizing that it wasn't personal. I wasn't turned on by anyone. Great. So he has someone that isn't interested in sex, and he is. It's still a lose-lose. Telling your partner that you're just not interested in sex in general and that he shouldn't take it personally does not make him feel better. Okay, so maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I have that. So here's some things you need to understand before we can move on what to do. Number 1, hopefully you realize now that this isn't an issue that just you have. This is the plight of many women for likely many generations in a culture that has an enormous amount of shame around sexual pleasure, especially for women. Most of us are blocked around our sexuality. Our culture is not conducive to self-care, even though self-care is a buzzword. So the first step is to understand that this is a typical dynamic of today's world that almost every long-term relationship will go through, and it's usually not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's not a sign that there is something necessarily wrong or bad about your relationship. Many books highlight this dynamic, such as Recipes for a Perfect Marriage by Kate Kerrigan. Thanks to Cheryl Paul for this recommendation. Fantastic book, sweet, realistic book, recommended ROCD read. Or really any book about a marriage that struggles with sex. Just go to a Reddit thread, I think it's called Dead Bedroom. You see lots of people dissatisfied with their sex lives. Number 2, much of today's media advice says that if you're in a sexless relationship or dissatisfied with your sex life, you should either A, endure it, B, cheat, or C, leave. Now, I don't know about you, but those sound like heartbreaking and defeating options. Now, of course, there are circumstances in which leaving or enduring it are kind of the only option. But there are many relationships in which there are other options that could potentially save a relationship. I don't mean make it less intolerable, but actually it can be harmonious and lovely. I'm here to talk to those that still want to put the effort into bringing good sex back into the picture. Number 3, your partner, if he's loving and secure, wants sex with you for a multitude of reasons. Only a tiny one of which is that he just has a boner that he needs to fix using your body. A loving partner does not see you as a jizz receptacle, even though when he's horny he acts weird. The subconscious part of him adores you in a much, much deeper way, even if he doesn't have the words to say it. So know that. As a woman, know that. Trust that. Here are some other reasons he wants to have sex with you. He feels most alive and connected to you when he has sex with you. When he sees you happy and in pleasure, it makes him happy and he wants to give you that more. He finds you absolutely gorgeous and hot. He thinks you have an awesome personality and is crazy attracted to you as a human being. You make him feel alive and inspired in a heavy, dark world. He sees the very best in you even when you don't see it in yourself. Of course, he may never consciously know nor tell you that these are the reasons why he wants to have sex with you. To him, it's biology. But if he only saw you as an object, he wouldn't be in a long-term, committed partnership with you. If that's all he wanted, he would be single, doing one-night stands or getting hookers. So these reasons are there, probably just a little bit more subconscious, but your subconscious is what drives you. Culture says men are only guided by their penises. They are not. That is so black and white. But men are often taught not to articulate their feelings and motivations, So they might not yet be able to tell you what's in their subconscious, how they really feel about you, which is that they absolutely adore you and want to enter your world and add value to it by literally entering your body. Energetically, after all, you are exchanging energies together. In my online course about relationship anxiety, I talk about projections and how to take the focus off your partner's imperfections, which are just a mirror for our own insecurities combined with an inability to own them in ourselves. There are specific meditations and exercises that I have in there that teach you how to name your deepest insecurities and be able to pinpoint and heal them. Okay, so what do we do about sex anxiety? Number 1, understand that if you're nitpicking your partner and feeling disgusted towards them, it's likely a projection. Ask yourself this question: are you feeling disgusted with you? If so, why? Have you been betraying yourself recently and frequently? Take the focus off your partner's shortcomings and look at where you're beating yourself up. Number 2, do you perceive yourself in some way as superior to your partner? This can often diminish respect and therefore attraction to your man. Why do you perceive him as inferior? Try this on for size. Somewhere, deep down, you are afraid of getting your heart broken. So it is easier to imagine yourself up on a pedestal where you tell yourself he will never leave you when that is not the case. The true reality where you're both on an even playing field is much more vulnerable, but it's also where richness and attraction lie. Number 3, women are typically an oven that takes time to preheat. Men are more like light switches, which means that when you start the sexual encounter, you might be trudging through the mud a little bit. But if you remain open to the experience, without any agenda, you can start to feel more and more powerful and energized in the sexual dynamic. Number 4, look at your schedule. What's the majority of your time spent on? Is your cup empty? If yes, fill that shit up before you go projecting all your stuff onto your partner. Sometimes you likely need way more rest time than you're currently giving yourself. And number 5, I just made this up. Do you even know how to turn yourself on and get yourself off? If you don't, how the F do you expect your partner to figure it out for you? Media tells us that the perfect partner will just get us and we'll have these crazy orgasms and they'll just blow your mind, and you're going to go home and call your friends and tell everyone how amazing he is in bed because, I don't know, maybe he's had a ton of practice and he just knows women. That is so toxic to tell yourself that there's a man out there who's just going to know what to do with you. You figure out what turns you on. And then you teach your man how to do it with you. In episode 1, I talked about my breakthrough trip to Austria. Sex has been much easier since I started liking who I am and taking responsibility for my own joy, my own sexual energy, and my own pleasure. Sometimes the sex will be great, and other times it will be blah. Sex quality waxes and wanes in every relationship. Culture and media will trick you into thinking it's supposed to be hot and heavy all the time, and if it's not, you or your partner or you both are doing something wrong. So be a rebel. Own your ordinariness and find the delicious moments within it, because sex is much richer that way. Sometimes I like to tell myself during our time in the bedroom, thanks to a suggestion I heard in a live session from Annie Lala, who is a fantastic relationship coach, I asked myself this question. If I knew that given the circumstances, this is the best possible sex I could possibly be having in this moment, what would I savor and celebrate about it? If I knew that given the circumstances, this is the best possible sex that this human being that I am could be having in this moment, what would I savor and celebrate about it? What's unique about this sexual experience that I couldn't get anywhere else? It is our responsibility to be scanning for all the ways we, our community, and our partners do consistently meet our needs and move through our relationships with a profound appreciation for it. So while most of the world will be complaining about their ordinary relationships, you could be the one that is gushing with gratitude over the same type of relationship. I read this quote somewhere once that this woman had been married for 20 years and she was just feeling really disconnected and unsupported by her husband. And then she went to yoga class and she saw the yoga teacher get dropped off by her husband. And the yoga teacher had also been married for about that amount of time. And she was gushing about her husband. And the yoga teacher said, "Can you believe it? He got up early this morning to drop me off at the studio and he picked up groceries this morning so I didn't have to. And he helped me carry them from the garage." And then the woman was like, my husband does all those things too, but I don't express any appreciation for those things. And look at how happy this yoga teacher is. And so when we witness people being grateful for the ordinary things, it's kind of a wake-up call for us that we can be grateful for the ordinary things too, because that's where the gratitude comes from. The gratitude doesn't come from the grand gestures, because you can't rely on those all the time. They're not sustainable. But gratitude for the little things in the ordinary, not only sustainable, but a giving life force that gets generated from inside. It's an act of rebellion to savor what is in a culture that is so hyper-focused on what's wrong and what's not enough. So have the courage to own your sexuality and your sense of badassness. So here are some things I regularly do to stay connected to my sexuality, which have nothing to do with my partner. I play guitar. I dance Argentine tango, or at least I used to before quarantine. I watercolor paint. I spend alone time in bed with myself. And can I say something that I don't hear very often? I don't really watch porn or even read erotica. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Part of that is because I can get incredibly turned on by a great music video or a piece of music or just, I don't know if this is weird or if anybody else does this, but just watching a fantastically stimulating lecture, bonus if it's like a hot professor, or just any work of art. So ditch the idea that the only thing that can turn you on is things that are designed to be sexual. Have you ever looked at an orchid? Or just looked for vaginas and penises in nature? Let that shit turn you on. It's amazing. Sometimes on my walks, I talk to the turtles and the birds and pretend they're talking back, and you just walk around with this playful sense of, living. Chances are, if you experience anxiety, you are one of the sensitive ones in this world, which comes with a superpower. It means that you don't need to be turned on by the things that are loud and overly stimulating. You get turned on by the subtle. So when you are connected to nature itself and people's creative natures, as in music and art, you will become connected to your own creative nature. And that is the essence of sexuality itself. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please take some time to flirt with the world today. This is my favorite thing to do every week, every work. I have a blast doing this, and I hope it just helps you be a little more wary about the disempowering messages we get about relationships
Because you don't realize how like these messages that we get from the media, they actually filter into your subconscious. Like, I think it's that Marilyn Monroe quote, if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. Okay, this is a belief, and all beliefs are true and untrue at the same time, depending on the context in which they are used. Sometimes these beliefs can be positive and helpful, depending on the situation, and sometimes they can be toxic, depending on the situation. So it really is on us to try these on for size and see whether they're empowering or not. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to get support from me beyond the podcast, I'm still active in a couple places, just not the podcast and not as much as I was before. I'm still hosting a monthly call on Patreon and sharing little voice notes from my heart in there when something comes up. So it's not as consistent, but I'm still there. And if you want to come on to my community call and ask questions, I am still offering support in that place once a month. So it's $5 to $9 a month, and you get some exclusive content there. The second thing is I'm still selling all of my courses. By far, my most popular one is called Both Feet In. It's for people who are struggling with relationship anxiety, and it teaches a lot of practices that can help you gain more confidence and learn how to tolerate difficult emotions and get alternating parts of you on the same page and rewrite your stories and beliefs about love. Some of these meditations that are taught are partnered meditations, meaning I recommend you find a buddy that's also doing the course. If you need help finding a buddy, you can always email my support team, who is keeping a running list of people looking for sort of accountability partners, even while I'm on maternity leave. And you can email them at support@anxiouslovecoach.com. And lastly, if my Wizios are up, you are always free to submit me a Wizio. This is basically my pick my brain option. And you can pick my brain for $67, or I have like an emergency one for, I think it's $117. And I will make you a short video with my thoughts within the week. So if that's something you're interested in, as long as I have it turned on, it's available. I still plan to check my email. So those are the ways you can still get support. I'm probably not going to be making new podcasts for a little while. I'm not going to be on Instagram as much or writing emails. So if you want to be in contact, this is the way to do it in a way that I think is going to feel really good for me. And with that, thanks so much for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I appreciate you so much for being a listener and a subscriber. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week and a beautiful life. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.